All right, welcome to Thursday's recap. This is Christian Farmer at Tribeca Trade Group, and again, a lot of things to talk about today. So let's go through them. The S&P, some back and forth movement today. A little bit of volatility, just like we saw yesterday. So definitely appears to be a little bit of profit taking going on in the beginning of the day, and then a rough climb back. But all in all, for the day, we're still trending above the short-term moving averages. 3 dojis, it looks like, in a row. So looks like we've lost a little bit of the upside momentum that we've had here, but we really haven't turned the corner. So you can kind of draw your own conclusion here. There's been a little bit of an uptick in volatility, and I'll show you where that's been present. Not so much in the S&P, but if we go over to the Nasdaq, what I like to look at with the Nasdaq, and again, similar type of price action, just kind of stalling out here a little bit on the highs, but not rolling over, still sticking with the uptrend and the upswing that we've been in. But one of the things that I've noticed is there's been an uptick in volatility. So the instrument for that is VXN. It's not the VIX. The VIX measures the short-term volatility in the S&P. The VXN measures short-term volatility in the Qs in the Nasdaq, the Nasdaq 100. So you could see that it's been spiking up here a little bit, and it's kind of been hanging on to it. So what can we learn from this spike up in volatility? We've seen it before, and it's quickly erased. So what I did here on a different chart is I charted the move in volatility in the Qs with the actual price. Normally when we see these short-term spikes up in volatility, you could see at the same time there's been some volatility in the Qs. Here you have a spike up in volatility, the Qs went down. Same thing back here, spike in volatility, Qs got beat up a little bit. It hasn't happened every time. There wasn't a big sell-off here. There was a decent red bar or blue bar on this chart, which is a down day. Here as well, and it quickly dissipated. Right here as well, we had a few days of increasing volatility, spiked here, and we recovered, as well as a drop down. Now what we're seeing in the last couple of days is a move up here. So I don't know how this is going to end, and it could be that there's a reason why why volatility is moving up. And again, it measures short-term, the expectations of short-term volatility. Well, what do we have who's reporting in the next week or two? We've got Microsoft, we've got Apple, we've got Google, we've got Amazon. So with all these names reporting, it kind of makes a little bit of sense that volatility is increasing, the expectations of volatility increasing, right? Those are big unknown events. So that could be the reason for the spike up that we're seeing in VXN. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see if that's the story. What you would want to see is once those names report, for this VXN to crash back below. To maybe get back to around the 15 level, maybe even further below, right? So that would prove to me after those names report that this is just volatility is increasing going into these earnings reports. If it doesn't, it could be a little bit of a warning sign that something is brewing here. So don't know. Keep an eye on it. So that's the one thing that I noticed today in the marketplace. Besides that, it's really, which we talked about yesterday, and I think a lot of people have their eyes on, is the move in currencies. So big move in the dollar index this morning on things that are going on here, things that are going on overseas. But this dollar has really broken down over the last couple weeks, but it came back today. You could see a big green bar. It's not quite I know people look for hammer bars. This is not a hammer bar, but it's still a move where we went lower and finished higher. So this thing traded a lot of volume today. This instrument normally does not. The UUP just does not get that much attention. People trade dollar futures, but if you look at, let's see if I can bring this over here. The biggest volume, or one of the biggest volume movers today, was UUP. It normally only trades less than 1 million shares. It traded 4.5 million shares today. That's a lot of volume. That's almost 5 times normal volume. So clearly people were using it today to express an opinion. And then vice versa. Mario Draghi spoke this morning. They didn't make any change to they did not make any change to their stimulus program, the ECB, but the euro was flying this morning, and it kind of looks like a possible reversal bar. It closed flat or unched, so looks like maybe a shooting star pattern. We'll see. The shooting star patterns are 3-day patterns, not just one. So keep an eye on that. Again, a lot of things have implications here. What happens when the dollar goes down? Well, there's a lot of things that happen, but commodities usually get a bid. So if the dollar starts moving up quickly, you could see, for example, what happened to gold today. Gold stalled right at this breakout level, interesting pivot level that I've got this trend line drawn that I've had drawn for a while, and we stalled right here. So I'm not saying that this is game over for gold, but we did start higher, try to break out further. I think gold was up at one point about 75 basis points and finished lower on the day. So it is an inside day, right? So you can't really make a big conclusion from that. So that's why I said it's not game over. But I would keep an eye on gold. We'll see if it manages to chug further above or go lower. Same thing with oil. Oil is, these are sensitive to currency moves. Oil was higher today and finished lower. So again, still maintaining the upward trend. The yellow is the 5-period exponential moving average, and we're still in that upswing, and we haven't broken it, but kind of looks like a little bit of a toppy candle. Again, we'll have to wait one more day to see if there's a pattern that's forming here. Nothing really to look at, but nothing to make a conclusion about, but certainly some things to keep your eye on. And then the last thing that I'll go to, and then I'll talk about a little bit of today's option activity, is bonds. Bonds are really important as well to keep an eye on. This is the long bond, and you could see that it found some support there. It was not able to break further lower from last week's lows. And if you look at IEF, which is the 7 to 10-year bond, you could see a pretty nice green bar in there. So bonds are coming back up. Why do I look at bonds? Why are they important? Because usually when bond prices go higher and yields go lower, it's generally bad for banks, and vice versa. When bonds go, the price goes higher, yields go lower. When I say vice versa, it's usually good for utilities and for REITs, those bond proxies. So speaking of utilities, look at what they did today. They were up. That's your best performing sector on the day, up almost 1.6%, and a nice rally from the lows. So there was some decent movers that had interest rate, moved on interest rates, and also that moved on the dollar. So other than that, your best performing sector, an area that really has been performing well after, some names that have reported earnings is ITA. This is your aerospace and defense ETF, 52-week high today, up 1.5%. Why is that? General Dynamics reported yesterday. Look at the move in General Dynamics. 206, 207 to 226 in 2 days. NOC reported this morning. Whoops, NOC, not NIC. Look at that thing, 52-week high, and launched up $11 today. Another name in the space that reported, Raytheon, very strong looking as well. I was in a Raytheon trade on the breakout. Decided was not going to be an earnings trade for me, so got out of it. But this thing has continued higher, launching higher, so really strong. And this is a group that's seen a lot of inflows. I actually have, just so you could see, this is the investment in the ITA ETF, so inflows. Had a couple outflows here, but more money going in. So this ETF is at the highest level of assets it's ever been. And clearly, right after the election in 2016, there was a lot of money that was being added to this very, very quickly, and it's been sustained. It's been very strong. All right, so we'll spend just 2 minutes on some earnings names. Really tricky, and it's just a one-day pattern, but a lot of names had good earnings. They were up pre-market, and they gave them all back. Caterpillar came back, but you could see that crazy move. Lam Research, what a horrible move this was. Started the day higher and, just got absolutely smoked, down 5%. It did not break any support, but if you were in a trade in Lam Research like I was, ouch. I was not in a big trade, but looked. So it's very difficult morale-wise when you see when in one minute you have a really big winner on your hands, and the next minute you have a loser on your hands. Xilinx, I was not in this one, but this one got crushed today. A lot of put buying in the semiconductor ETF. This one more damage done. Broken below the 50-day moving average. Next support would be that white line, the 200-day moving average. Also this value area, but ouch. What a move. The semiconductor ETF, just looking at the whole group, looked like a move back into the 50-day moving average. I wouldn't say again that it's game over for the semiconductors, just one ugly day. We've seen this before, and we've seen price action only reclaim those levels. Intel was out after earnings, as well as CLAC. I think we'll see if Intel can hold the gains, because certainly Lam Research and Xilinx did not. So we'll see if this one's any different. It is still holding the gains. CLAC was another one that reported. But just being as objective as possible, I didn't like the look of some things today, and I reduced some risk. CLAC not much of a mover after hours. So I'll talk about what I did. I've been sticking with this whole move the beginning of the year, letting aggressive option activity really be a guide for me to get into positions, as well as the technicals. We've participated in a lot of names that had not yet broken out, and I could rattle off a list of those names, but names that just like MGM, Royal Caribbean, Carnival. So that, and I could probably come up with 10 more names. Dow DuPont. But anyway, that's not the point of this. There's been some really good opportunities out there in names that came out of consolidation and broke to new highs. Now at this point, since I'm up over 40% year to date in options, is the time where I think I want to pull back some of that risk and wait and see. And that's been my game plan all along going into earnings. I think earnings is a very choppy time of the year to try to swing trade. So I pare it back, and I've learned from my past trading to do so. It's just a challenging time, a very whipsaw move, just as I pointed out a couple of those names. Sometimes it's best to kind of just sit on your hands and see what these names, how they're going to react to earnings, and then see if call buyers rush back into them on dips. If they don't, you kind of leave them alone. So I think that's enough of that. I also took some profits in something I haven't done in a long time. I'll show you my cash position, my cash trend portfolio, which is outpacing the S&P. It was up earlier, but we're more than this. But it's still up 9% year to date versus the S&P up 6.2%. Why is it outperforming so much? Because I've got a huge position in I should say I'm overweight emerging markets. So I don't have one big huge position in emerging markets, but I'm long EEM, frontier markets, FM, ASHR. I'm long EWS, Singapore, BZUN, single name, China internet name. I was also long MCHI, which I decided to take my profits in that position today. And I'm also long RSX, and I'm also long some Brazil as well. Where's Brazil? EWZS, and then also I see PBR on here as well. I'm also long PBR. So I decided to take off MCHI today and also EEM. Why did I do that today? This is a trend trading portfolio. It's supposed to stick with the trend, right? Well, I can get back into EM whenever I want. So that's the whole reason. I think it's, at this point, very, very overbought, and I'm up huge in these positions. And again, 3 days makes a reversal pattern, but we're coming off like an 80 RSI. If it doesn't break down here, what my goal is to take profits, and then if we happen to get a mini pullback, I will be right back in. Same thing with MCHI, which looks like a little bit more of a toppy looking pattern today. This not exactly an evening star pattern, but close to it. So we'll see what happens. I think the Hang Seng and so forth has been extremely overbought. I want to be in emerging markets. That's why I still have so just because I took 2 positions off, I'm still overweight emerging markets. But I just want to recognize this price action, how great it's been. Let me take a little bit of money off the table, and I'll reassess in a couple days. All right, so that is what I did today in cash. Option activity, I'll just spend a couple minutes on it. There were some trades that were of interest. Yum China, but again, this is very tricky time of the year. Yum reports in like a week. So Yum China, they went out, they bought the 50-55 call spread, sold puts, but I think Yum China reports in about a week. A couple other names that were interesting. There was one other name that do I not have it on here? MLCO calls were bought, another casino name. There was a little bit of fast Trivago calls that hit. Geez, why can't I remember? There was one other name that reports earnings next week. So some of which you just got like you just have to sit on your hands and say, or you could say, hey, I'm going to participate in this trade up to earnings. If it works, if it's a run up into earnings, awesome. And then you could leave a little bit on for earnings. Or like me, I decided not to do anything here with Yum China. I like the chart, but I'll sit and I'll wait for that earnings report for this one. I've had different strategies on different names. One name that I did take today was AES. It's classified as a utility name. There's an activist in there now. It's Value Act is in there, but it is above the 200-day moving average. This is like a power generation company. They convert seawater to energy, and they also have some coal as well, which I believe Value Act came in and said that they want them to get out of that business. So there's a little bit of stuff going on in there, but there was a lot of calls that were purchased. Some of them were rebooked, which makes it difficult to read at the end of the day. But I think for the March, there was 16,000 of these March 12 calls purchased for around 20 to 25 cents. So it's got to get above, if you kind of zoom out here, it's got to get above here by March. I think that's doable. If you look at see if I can zoom out here a little bit. I don't know why this is so zoomed in. There we go. So 12 and a quarter. It is a significant amount higher here, but it's clearly come from 1560. So it's above the 200-day moving average. Its 200-day moving average is kind of sloping down a little bit, but I like the action in it, and I like somebody just reported a big stake in it as well. So you got a pretty big investor in there. And I think that was the only new trade that I did today. Other than that, I took off a lot of positions today, and I'll reassess in the next couple days and kind of come in a little bit cleaner to earnings. All right, guys, thanks for watching the video. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.